Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen across our beautiful country of Canada, our friends around the world in the known and unknown universe. Welcome back to your favorite Angry Canadian on the 12th day of March 2024. Here's a question. Do you think that our political system, basically like here in Canada and the US and that, it's a two-party system? There's a few countries in the Western world that have many parties, which doesn't always make things better. But we have two-party systems, and do you think they work? I don't. So I've decided that perhaps it's time I entered politics, the Angry Canadian, and ran for office. I don't care if it's in municipal, locally, or provincially, or federally. Every election that comes along, and I don't want, do you know that in Canada to run for the Prime Minister, you got to have a certain amount of money and all this sort of shit? How the hell did that happen? That you got to put it, and how is it that the media decides who's going to be debating and what the topics are? Give me a break. Let's have a little bit of freedom in our friggin' country while we still can. And I can tell you right now, I know how to stop wars almost instantly. Make all the military industrial complex participants, the corporations that make the bombs, the planes, the missiles, all this stuff, take the profit motive out of it. It's that simple. If there's no profit to be made, you think they're going to be building the bombs, the planes, bullets, whatever the hell, they're not going to build for free. Excuse this little segment. That's my little monkey friend from, what was it, about 15, 16 years ago in Mexico? It was cute. Anyway, I think more people should pick up the independent, pick up the populist. Oh, you got to be the who the hell is going to run the country if it's not the citizens? Well, there's the minority of 3 over there, and we have to bend our rules and laws to appease them. And in the meantime, we're going to open up the gates so that hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people can come in to our land. This is happening in Europe, in US, in Canada, and our people are suffering. Where's the media on this? Where is the politicians on this? Well, shit. Independent, populist, let's stand together. Let's throw our hats in. It doesn't matter if it does matter. It'd be good if we all won. But at least show them that we're not going to be sitting on the ground anymore taking all their shit. Take a look at what's happening in Gaza with Palestine and Israel. We're being fed BS.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh.
Over the past few weeks, the Biden administration has been publicly voicing reservations over the mounting death toll in Gaza, calling on Israel to protect civilians and allow in humanitarian aid. But behind the scenes, the Biden administration has quietly approved and delivered more than 100 separate weapons sales to Israel over the last 5 months, amounting to thousands of precision-guided munitions, small-diameter bombs, bunker busters, and other lethal aid. This, according to a new investigation by The Washington Post.
Only 2 approved foreign military sales to Israel have been made public since the launch of Israel's assault on October 7th, amounting to over $250 million worth of tank shells and ammunition, which the administration authorized using emergency authority to bypass Congress. But in the case of the 100 other weapons sales, known as foreign military sales, the arms transfers were made without any public debate because each fell under a specific dollar amount that requires the executive branch to individually notify Congress.
As Russia's invasion approaches its second grim anniversary, Ukraine continues to struggle. The latest loss, the city of Avdiivka falling to Moscow.
Canada has a responsibility to help Ukraine win back its territory.
The defense minister announced what form Ottawa's new help will take. Some 800 drones worth nearly $100 million from a previously announced assistance package, capable of surveillance as well as carrying small payloads of munitions.
We work very closely with Ukrainian industry, Ukrainian military, and their government to determine what they need.
But Ukraine needs more than just drones. It was forced to ration ammunition as Russia swept through Avdiivka.
Keeping Ukraine in the artificial deficit of weapons, particularly in deficit of artillery and long-range capabilities, allows Putin to adapt to the current intensity of the war. These self-weakening of democracy over time undermines our joint results.
And let's go back now to Ukraine, where the Prime Minister is speaking.
For to last this long, no one expected that Ukraine would withstand Putin's army, but as Ukraine has proven over and over again, Putin made a grave miscalculation, and Ukraine still stands. Ще вмерла Україна. Volodymyr, you are leading the battle against autocracy and the battle to preserve the peace and security that our world is built on. So today, Canada and Ukraine have completed negotiations and have signed a historic new bilateral security cooperation agreement. As part of our agreement, we're committing over $3 billion of critical military and financial support to Ukraine in 2024. The new military support builds on what we've provided since 2022 and continue to provide, and it includes significant support for the Armoured Coalition, which is an area of Canadian strength and will allow us to continue to demonstrate leadership amongst our coalition partners, and support to the Air Force Coalition, building on our commitment in July.
What an absolute piece of shit. You know, we're going to give weapons for peace. And the budget is going to balance itself. Yeah, like, you know, it does. What an idiot. And how can people believe and put up with this bullshit basically year after year? We're going to get a new political system where we can impeach our officials, where we can call them to a hearing and have them answer. Trudeau, tell us about the COVID thing. Tell us about how the vaccinations, where the vaccines came from, how much money was involved. Let's have an open the fucking books. Open the books about what you've sent to Ukraine so far. I know we've sent tanks and stuff. How many of those are still in use? How many of the weapons we sent to Ukraine stayed in weapon, or where did they go? You know, I mean, let's be an honest country, and we're not that. We need independent, we need people who have common sense, who are populists, who can get people behind them, because the way the system is right now, we're all in for doom. And that's not me trying to scare people about, oh, he's a conspiracy theorist. Well, you know, when the conspiracy bites you in the ass, you've got to think otherwise.
Let me tell you what's going on in Canada, because as I always say, what happens in Canada today may happen in the U.S. 5 years from now. It's like we're a bad time machine to see your future. This week, Justin Trudeau introduced a new bill called Bill C-63. It's got a lot of things in it that are atrocious. He's created a new hate crime bill, life in prison, new hate crime law. There's nothing that gets you life in prison in Canada, not even murder, but hate speech now does. He's created a pre-crime for hate. If you have, quote, fear of hate, that's the title of the section of the law, you can get a judge to issue a kind of restraining order against your enemy before he does anything, before he says anything. And that restraining order can include house arrest, giving up any lawful firearms, limiting who he can talk to directly or indirectly, limiting the places he can go, and requiring him to take urine and blood tests. just because you are, quote, afraid he might in the future say some hate speech.
Dirty deeds done with shit. Dirty deeds, little Bo Peep.
Canadian-Ukrainian community that goes back decades and even longer. It was the Conservative government of Stephen Harper that moved to kick Putin out of the G8, making it the G7. It was the Conservative Party that first recognized Ukraine's independence from the then Soviet Union in 1991. It was the Conservative government that first provided military aid to Ukraine back in 2014.
We overthrew the government in 2014. USAID, which has spent $5 billion, which is a front for the CIA, which everybody acknowledges, went in there and started a revolution called the Maidan Rebellion, where there was these protests that ended with the overthrow of the elected government of Ukraine that wanted to keep Ukraine neutral. Yanukovych wanted to keep NATO neutral. We wanted a pro-U.S. government. So we went in there in 2014, overthrew their government, and placed a government. And by the way, a month before the overthrow, we now have tapes that you can go on the internet and listen to. Victoria Nuland, who's the head of the neocons now, the deputy director of the State Department, choosing the new Ukrainian cabinet that will be put in place after the coup that was still a month away. So she knew the coup was coming a month in advance.
But who is she to us?
She's us. She's the head of the State Department. She's now, number 3 in the State Department. But she's been in the State Department. She's one of the, she runs the neocon program, which is, continual wars. So we then pick a new government. The new government comes in, immediately begins attacking the people of Donbass and Lugansk, who are Russian-speaking ethnic Russians. They banned the Russian language, there was 2 languages that were 2 official languages. Ukraine, they banned that. Violence immediately erupts, and they kill 14. There's a civil war. This war started in 2014. There's 14,000 ethnic Russians are killed. And Putin kept saying, you're killing our people. He's trying to get a peace agreement. They finally work out a peace agreement called the Minsk Accords. Germany signs onto it, France signs onto it, England signs onto it, and Russia sign onto it. Zelensky runs in 2019 as president. He has one platform issue. He's a comedian and an actor, which I'm not.
Is there anything wrong with that?
Oh, my wife is one of those.
Okay, all right.
So, but he never had any political experience.
Right.
And he wins with 70% of the vote. Why? Because he runs on a peace platform. I'm going to sign the Minsk Accords. As soon as he gets in there, Victoria Nuland and the ultra-nationalists, which is a nice way of describing the people who run that government now, tell him that he can't do it. He can't sign it. So he pivots. And then Putin then says, okay, Putin is now faced with this problem. The United States government is now running the government of Ukraine. And he is frightened to death that the U.S. Navy is going to go into Vladivostok, which is, the southern port. It's been the Russian port. It's the only warm water port Russia has for 347 years. So he then goes right into Ukraine into Crimea, and takes Crimea without firing a shot. Doesn't kill a single person because the people of Crimea are ethnic Russian and want him back, want him in there. Donbass and Lugansk then votes 90 to 10 to join Russia. Putin says, no, I don't want you. I want Ukraine to be a functioning state. But let's sign the Minsk Accords. And they won't sign it. So then he sends in 40,000 troops. I'm almost done with this. Okay. He sends in 40,000 troops. That is not somebody who wants to conquer Ukraine. It's a nation of 44 million people. All he wanted was us back at the negotiating table. Zelensky, we will not help Zelensky negotiate. So he goes to Israel and gets Naftali Bennett and Erdogan in Turkey to sponsor negotiations, and they go and they work out a peace agreement. And Putin, they sign it in April of 2022. Putin is withdrawing his troops according to this peace agreement, already starts withdrawing them. Biden sends over Tony Blair and tells Zelensky to rip up the peace agreement. Now, how do we know this? Because all of the negotiators are now talking, including Naftali Bennett, and you can look it up when you're on the internet. You say you spend a lot of time.
I do.
Look at his speech where he tells you what happened. The lead Ukrainian negotiator this week came clean and said, yeah, that's what happened. This is a war that should have never happened. It's a war the Russians tried repeatedly to settle on terms that were very, very beneficial to Ukraine and us. The major thing they wanted was for us to keep NATO out of the Ukraine. The big military contractors want to add new countries to NATO all the time. Why? Because then that country has to conform its military purchases to NATO weapon specifications, which means certain companies, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Boeing, and Lockheed, get a trapped market. In March of 2022, we committed $113 billion. Just to give you an example, we could have built a home for almost every homeless person in this country. We then committed another $24 billion since then, 2 months ago, and now President Biden's asking for another $60 billion. But the big, big expenses are going to come after the war, when we have to rebuild all the things that we destroyed. Mitch McConnell was asked, can we really afford to spend $113 billion to Ukraine? He said, don't worry. It's not really going to Ukraine.
It's going to American defense manufacturers.
So he just admitted it's a money laundering scheme. And who do you think owns every one of those companies? BlackRock. So Tim Scott, during the Republican debate, said, don't worry, it's not a gift to Ukraine, it's a loan. So raise your hand if you think that that loan's ever getting paid back. Yeah, of course it's not. So why do they call it a loan? Because if they call it a loan, they can impose loan conditions. And what are the loan conditions that we impose on? Number one, an extreme austerity program, so that if you're poor in Ukraine, you're going to be poor forever. Number two, most important, Ukraine has to put all of its government-owned assets up for sale to multinational corporations, including all of its agricultural land, the biggest single asset in Europe. In Ukraine, there's been 1,000 years of war fought over that land. It's the richest farmland in the world. It's the breadbasket of Europe. 500,000 kids almost, Ukrainian kids, have died to keep that land as part of Ukraine. They almost certainly didn't know about this loan condition. They've already sold 30% of it. The buyers were DuPont, Cargill, and Monsanto. Who do you think owns all of those companies? Yeah, BlackRock. And then in December, President Biden gave out the contract to rebuild Ukraine. And who do you think got that contract? BlackRock. So they're doing this right in front of us. They don't even care that we know anymore, because they know that they can get away with it. And how do they know that? Because they have a strategy. And that strategy is an old strategy, which is they keep us at war with each other. They keep us hating on each other. They keep the Republicans and Democrats fighting each other, black against white, and all these divisions that they sow.
Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. How to do this? 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
He doesn't have to have done anything in the past. This is a pre-crime, like in that science fiction movie, Minority Report. That's in this bill. Let me tell you other things in this bill. Donald Trump and his travails with the U.S. legal system, they're covered a lot by the Canadian media, and Justin Trudeau's obsessed with Donald Trump. So he's been watching what Democrats have done, and he's learned from it. Trump is being prosecuted by high-profile prosecutors. Trudeau has one-upped that. Trudeau has now said that anyone in Canada, even non-citizens, can file hate speech complaints against anyone. And if they're successful, they get $20,000 from the target, and the target has to pay a fine of up to $50,000. So let me just say this more clearly. If there's anyone on social media, because this is the social media law Trudeau's introduced, if there's anyone who has a YouTube video, a tweet, a Facebook comment that you think creates hate, you can go to the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal and complain about it. You don't have to hire a lawyer. You don't have to spend any money. The government will have the hearing, and if your complaint is upheld, you get $20,000 from the victim. So instead of having maybe 20...
Wait. Who gets the 30, the remaining 30?
20 goes to the complainant, and an additional 50 goes to the government. So you're on the hook for $70,000 a pop. So let's take someone like Jordan Peterson. Every day he's saying something controversial on YouTube, on Twitter. Oh, and by the way, this applies to all of your historical work that's online. So as long as it's still online and you control it,
oh my God,
they can go back through your history, 5 years, 10 years, and why wouldn't they complain about literally every tweet you make, literally every YouTube video? There's no cost, there's no downside, and even if only 5% of your complaints get through to the target, you're smacking them with $20,000 for yourself and a $50,000 fine. This will create a huge industry. So Trudeau saw what they were doing to Trump and said, I can do one better. I'm not going to have a few sniper shots. I'm going to have a shotgun blast. I'm going to have hundreds of complaints swarming my enemies, and I don't even have to do it. I will mobilize a woke army. But there's one more thing, and people can't believe it when I tell it to them, but it's right there in the law in black and white. You can make a complaint in secret, and the target of your complaint never gets to know your identity. You can give evidence in secret. The complaint can be made in secret. So you could have a company, a political party, a busybody who's literally filing 100 a day, and you'll never know it. And let me just be clear about one thing. You don't have to be a victim. You don't have to have any standing. You don't have to be mentioned at all. You can just do this as a hobby, as an obsession, as a job, as a political vengeance. Maybe you're a disgruntled ex-employee. This is all in Bill C-63, and you take it all together, this is the most draconian anti-free speech bill anywhere in the world.
How much lies do you think we get told on a daily basis by our own government and media. I just saw another video pleading for money for media because, well, you know, why are they losing their viewers, their readers? Why? Because people are tired of the bullshit. So we got to get independent candidates who do not belong to any established party. You know, I mean, take a look at the NDP and Liberals in Canada now. Opposite ends of the spectrum, but boy, are they ever buddy-buddy, along with their good butt, their Klaus Schwab at the WEF. But our media doesn't cover it. We're not told the truth. We need independent populist candidates who will act on behalf of the friggin' majority of Canadians, is how I see it.